I'd like to call to order the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular township board meeting for Tuesday, June 28th, 2022 to order. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk Barry, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph. Here. Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Barry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. With Clerk Barry.
Item 4A is to approve the agenda with addendum if necessary. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Clerk Barry, supported by
Support.
Treasurer Elliott, to approve the agenda as presented. Clerk Barry, would you call the roll?
Clerk Barry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 5, presentations. Mr. Sousa, are you here? Mr. Sousa was traveling from a distance, so he may not be here, so we can skip the presentation and go to item 6, department reports. Department reports, Trustee DeMink.
Okay, from Leisure Services, Amanda. Make way for the Sonic Freeway on Friday, July 8th at 6:30 p.m. when this Dynamite Trio kicks off Chesterfield's summer concert series. Bring the entire family for Friday night food and fun hosted at Chesterfield Township Municipal Offices. Dine at the Twisted Street Barbecue food truck and have your kids entertained with simple games. Thank you to our generous sponsors, Genesis Credit Union, P.G.A. Dentistry, and Giffords Websters. On Tuesday, July 5th at 7 p.m., join us for Ponyo at the outdoor movie screen at Brandenburg Park. Arrive early and spend time in the splash pad or on the playgrounds. Thank you to the Chesterfield Township Library for partnering with us to provide some family fun. And lastly, senior citizens are invited to our All-American Party on Thursday, July 7th from 1 to 4 p.m. This indoor-outdoor event includes a catered lunch, dancing, and dessert. Cost is $20 per person. Space is limited. Contact the Leisure Services Department. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Treasurer's update. The summer tax bills have a new format with larger, easier to read print. Look for them in your mailbox this weekend. Remember, you can always pay your taxes online without a fee by using the e-check option at www.chesterfieldtwp.org. On tonight's check run, you will see a list of checks that were reissued, stale-dated checks totaling over $8,000, and also a check to the Michigan Department of Treasury for over $30,000. My department discovered the outstanding checks were dating back several years. I would like to thank the clerk and supervisor for supporting the finance department, working with Treasury to quickly reissue or escheat all outstanding checks in compliance with state law. A SEMCOG update. Trustee Vosberg and I attended the SEMCOG General Assembly meeting on June 23rd. At this meeting, there was a panel discussion on positioning Michigan for rapid growth in the mobility sector. The panel consisted of members from the Detroit Regional Partnership, Walbridge, and Mish Auto. The panel highlighted key areas of concentration for communities like ours, so that we can be aware of things that are important in attracting development from the automotive sector. The key areas for manufacturers and suppliers they're looking for are workforce, utility costs, site availability, incentives, and positive perceptions of the community and the board. On another exciting note, from SEMCOG, we received notification today that SEMCOG's Regional Review Committee has approved a planning assistance grant for $45,000 for the Salt River Greenway Planning Project. This is a partnered effort with Macomb County Planning and Economic Development, Chesterfield Township, Lenox Township, and New Haven. This exciting project will highlight the Salt River that travels south from its headwaters just west of Richmond. 17.9 miles of stream flows through Lenox Township, New Haven, and empties into the Anchor Bay of Lake St. Clair in Chesterfield Township on the eastern edge of Macomb County. We are very excited about this project in the future of the Salt River. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Elliott. Any further department report? Trustee Joseph.
A quick update from the library board meeting last week, well, actually June 15th, and the discussion was pretty nice to hear. There is plans for a donor recognition wall where some of the generous members of our community have contributed great sums of money. So the library is looking to put together a donor recognition wall. Tons of programming and great feedback from the residents on some of the summer reading programs that are going on in the library. And also an update from our most recent Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting. We got a much more in-depth breakdown of the agenda item that was before us at our last meeting, having to do with the purchasing of the rifles, updated equipment there, and Trustee Demink, as you were kind of on asking the questions regarding the updated stocks, and is this more consistent with appropriate tactical gear for the conditions that we find ourselves in as a country, and for officers to be in schools dealing with active shooter. There is a premium paid on having the right equipment, in the officer's hands at the appropriate time. So, commend Director Bassett for being on top of that and working with the administrative team to make sure that our schools and any business, any situation where the department gets called out to an active shooter, having the right equipment is just a premium. The other very exciting thing that I'd like residents to know is the collaboration and teamwork between our two public safety teams. Our fire department has been working collaboratively with the police department, and if you can envision, firefighters need to get into buildings and maybe break down doors or enter areas of buildings to fight fire. They're very experienced in that, and they have tools to get past locked doors. Being able to share that training with the police department, who unfortunately now finds themselves in a situation where they may have to breach a doorway to get to a bad person doing bad things. So just understanding the tools and pry bars and different equipment, the fire department is able to provide training to the police department, and another example of our two great public safety teams working together. Direction of the department is to continue to examine use of force. There was talk of a de-escalation simulator, and so the department is actively training to make sure that they have the most advanced training available to assist with whatever dangerous situation we may find. We have some new heavy rescue equipment, and in the fire department, the intent is to be the most well-trained department in the county. We have become the go-to in the county for, I think, a tactical directional path that the fire department has been on. Partnering with MedStar to handle some of the load as it relates to medical runs has put our firefighters in a position to receive training, confined space training, ice rescue, all different types of specialty things that don't happen every day, but when they do, Chesterfield Fire is becoming the place that the county relies on and calls upon for disasters in other places, and it's because of the investment that we've made in the training of our fire staff. So a lot of very good things happening. We did talk about some expenses that we anticipate coming to the board for approval. Trustee Demink, I know you know this area quite well with regard to radios. The equipment that is being used in the police department now, I believe Motorola had one model previous to that. It was soup cans and yarn. That was the area just before the current technology that the police are using. There are no more parts for these radios. They literally have to get on eBay or other government sites and try to purchase, radios, even radios that aren't working, just for parts. And so we've cannibalized our broken radios, and we continue to look for, just equipment to keep us together until we can replace the system. But that is a major expense. We'll hear more about it in the coming months. But the preparation has begun to secure the proper radio equipment. And we talked about several other things, but that's the bulk of our conversation. So our next meeting will be in August, and we will have more information about radios and other things coming to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Quite a bit of information to update the board and the public on with regards to the area of elections. In the last week, we've been very, very busy in the elections department. First and foremost, on Friday, all of the absentee ballots that had been requested up until this point were mailed out to the public. So anyone who has requested an absentee ballot should have received it or should be receiving it by the end of the week. In the event that you requested an absentee ballot and you have not received it by the end of the week, please contact the clerk's department and we will be able to track that ballot for you. Also, in the event that you receive your ballot and you have voted that ballot and you change your mind or you realize that you have made a mistake on your ballot, you may come to the clerk's office and with a written request, you may spoil that ballot and you will have a new ballot issued to you. You can do that up to the day before the election. So a lot of folks aren't aware that they can do that, but that is something that is available to you. Also very important on this ballot that is coming out to you this week is that in the partisan section, and there is really only one section of this ballot, and that is the partisan section, you will have a choice between choosing among the Republican candidates or the Democratic candidates. You cannot select candidates from both columns. If you do, that will spoil your ballot, and your ballot will not count. So we want everyone's vote to count, so please be advised that you must make your selections from either the Republican or the Democratic columns. You cannot make selections from both. Some people may refer to that as splitting their ticket. You cannot do that during a primary election or it will spoil your ballot, so please be advised of that. Also, the Election Commission met on Friday as well, and among other things, the members of the Election Commission are myself, Trustee Vosberg, Trustee Anderson, and we discussed, among other things, what was on the ballot. We also approved the list of election inspectors, the receiving board, and various other pieces of business that the Election Commission is tasked with. Those things were completed on Friday. One of the things that we discussed also was consideration of an increase in compensation for our election inspectors, considering the climate. It is very difficult to attract and retain labor in all sectors, and that is no different in elections. And so we had a discussion regarding that, and that recommendation will be coming to the board on a future meeting as well. Lastly, we have two petitions that are currently being circulated in the township for two different issues. Both of those petitions have different rules and different regulations and protocols involved with them. The first petition that is being circulated is regarding commercial cannabis in Chesterfield. The circulators of that petition have until August 2nd to submit the requisite number of signatures from valid registered voters in Chesterfield Township only. The second petition is a referendum on a bond sale. That petition, with the requisite number of signatures, is due into the clerk's office by July the 25th. I will continue to keep the board and the public updated as to the status of those petition drives and if they come to our office and what the result is and what next steps are as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Clerk Berry. If I could revisit.
There's one other departmental report. I'm sorry, board members, I asked the director to speak on fireworks laws while he's here tonight, so we know what's coming up.
Please, Director Bassett.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just as we approach the 4th of July holiday season and during the holiday weekend, I want to remind everyone that fireworks cannot be ignited prior to 11 a.m. and after 11:45 p.m. So if we can all try and be good neighbors, it would certainly help the public safety group. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bassett. If the board will allow me, I'd like to revisit item 5, presentation. Mr. Sousa, you did arrive. If you wouldn't mind taking the podium, we'll give you, pardon me? Yes, sir, it is. If you can take the podium.
Good evening. My name is Keith Sousa. I'm a volunteer with the Employer Support for the Guard and Reserve. I apologize for being late. I was supposed to be here prior to the start of the trustee meeting. The Employer Support for the Guard and Reserve is a Department of Defense committee which was created in 1972 to assist those veterans that were coming back from Vietnam. A lot of them came back to not having a job. They had a job when they left. They didn't have one when they came back. So the federal government stepped in and said that they wanted to prevent that from happening in the future. That was also the end of the draft. So things were changing in America pretty quickly. In 1994, Congress created a law called the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Act, which was there to protect members of the Guard and Reserve forces as well as their family members. So one of the things that we do as volunteers, in fact, each state has a committee. Most of us are volunteers, and a good majority of us are veterans. So what we do is we brief these guardsmen and reservists on their federal rights under the laws so that they're not prejudiced against because of their military affiliation. One of the other things that we do is we recognize employers that are very supportive of their employees who are members of the Guard and Reserve. This has been a real strain on employers for the last several years. Those employees have been gone for deployment and those kind of things, and the employers have had to make up whatever loss of personnel they have. So anyway, one of the reasons that I'm here this evening is one of your patrolmen, Casey, sorry, I lost my mind. Casey Nickerson. He's currently deployed with the Army National Guard. He will not be back until November. So what he did is he put his boss in for a Patriot Award, which is a Department of Defense award, and that recognizes those employers that have gone above and beyond the call of duty. In this case, Sergeant First Class Nickerson has been gone numerous times, sometimes for over 400 days. Not sure how long he's been gone this time, but again, he won't be back until November. So he asked me to recognize his boss. And Mr. Kersten, if you would at this time, please come forward. So on behalf of the Department of Defense, I'd like to recognize Bradley A. Kersten for Chesterfield Township Police Department as a patriotic employer for contributing to national security, protecting liberty and freedom by supporting employee participation in America's National Guard and Reserve Force. And I'm honored to be able to present this today. So, thank you very much.
Just a few words about Sergeant First Class Nickerson. He's a local individual that this board actually participated. Trustee Anderson, you sat in his original interview when he was hired and offered a job here. He was a young person that just came back from Iraq and Afghanistan, put himself through the Macomb Police Academy, through the military, with the military's help, stayed in as an active reservist. He has been deployed. I know when I was the police chief, he had been deployed 4 different times. Kenosha, Wisconsin, Chicago. He went back overseas, and he is currently assigned for border protection down in Texas. And he has a wife, a young family, who is been left up here while he's deployed. He is a great officer, this board here, and it's not just me, sir. It is this entire board, this entire community that recognized him, brought him in as a quality person, and gratefully, he's a Chesterfield police officer. So we applaud him. I thank him. I've tried to communicate with him. I know he's deployed. I hate bothering him. I just wanted him to know that I appreciate this.
Sure.
Thank him immensely for me and the entire township.
I certainly will. He wanted to make sure that you got this
I
prior to
told
him coming back, so it's my pleasure to be able to do this. And if I could get somebody to take a picture, please.
Yeah, do you want to go in front of the up here meeting with the?
Dude, would you mind if the whole board joined in?
No, that'd be great, please.
Thank you.
Item 7, the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 14th, 2022. 7B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. 7C, request and approval of repair costs to damage to police vehicle number 28 from an accident in the amount of $5,401.10 payable to P.G.A. Collision. 7D, adopt objective criteria for granting an industrial facilities exemption certificate, IFEC, as prepared by the assessor.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Clerk Berry.
Support.
Moved by Treasurer Elliott. Comments from the board? Comments from the public?
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. Couple questions on the bill run. Under the general fund for trustees, I noticed that there was some travel and training done. It was part of the Anchor Bay Chamber. On the bill run, I'd like it to be more specific with names on there on who the reimbursement was to. We've always had the name on there, but I do not see specifically what this who the individual or individuals were for the reimbursement. Under administrative services, we've got travel, training, and school for Delta Airlines for a conference, but it doesn't tell me who went to that conference. We've got some more under engineering. We've got travel, training to Boyne Mountain Lodge with no name on it. So we used to have names on there. So we've gotten away from that, and I'd like to go back to that. So we need to be more detailed. And under the supervisor's office here, I'm a bit confused here because I've got a board-appointed supervisor right now, Bradley Kersten, in there. But on the bill run, I've got a Dan Accavetti, a reimbursement from SEMCOG. He no longer works for the township, so I'm confused on why we would be doing any reimbursements to him unless it was an error on the individual that the refund was made to. And then when we get to water and sewer, when we go under our fuel costs, I've got $5,521.87. I mean, our fuel just keeps going up, and, at $5 a gallon, we're gonna have to do a better job, and when we make runs out there, so we're gonna have to be more strategic when we send our vehicles out there. That's just water and sewer. And then when we look at facilities and operations, I've got another $3,700. So between the both of them, just in a round ballpark figure, we're almost at $10,000 a month in fuel costs. So that to me is astronomical and ridiculous. So if we can work on curtailing that, maybe getting more strategic on our runs, and in that $3,700, I'm just curious. I mean, I know, our board's appointed supervisor said that one of the township employees could take a vehicle home for personal use. I was just wondering how much of that $3,700 in gas on that personal use is in that bill. So, thank you.
Further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back up to the board. Treasurer Elliott, please.
Thank you. In response to the bill run, there was reissued checks, and Dana Gavetti was one of those reissued checks. That was what I spoke about earlier. Those were outstanding checks that were reissued. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve the consent agenda as read. Clerk Berry?
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8, the public hearing. There are 2 scheduled public hearings. Clerk Berry?
Item 8A is to hold a public hearing for June 28th, 2022, to hear comments on an application for an industrial facilities exemption certificate, IFEC, for real and personal property submitted by National Research Company located at 55911 Gratiot Avenue, Chesterfield Township, Michigan, 48051. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing at 8:28 p.m., or excuse me, 7:28 p.m.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Demink? I'm sorry, Trustee Demink. Clerk Berry, would you call the roll?
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Demink. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. I believe the petitioners are here for the public hearing. Sir, if you would, step to the podium, please, make your presentation.
Sorry about that. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you this evening on behalf of National Research Company. My name is Jim Ahi. I am the, what is my title? I'm Program Director of Economic Development over at the county. And so I kind of oversee all this stuff for all the different regions around here. And tonight we're here with Mr. Bill Fisher, who's the president and owner of National Research Company. They are seeking a resolution or requesting a resolution for an industrial facilities tax exemption on new real property investment of over $2.2 million that the company will be making. The investment will be to expand its existing building footprint, basically more than doubling it, adding over 26,000 square feet. And this is again to accommodate what they currently do, which includes their research and development and for the product that they make, as well as the manufacturing and the pilot programs that they create that will be rolled out across the country to help with energy efficiency and savings. The investment will create 15 new jobs and will help the company maintain its existing positions there, which there are 8. The total investment, which is up to almost $2.4 million, but that includes personal property of $154,000. And as everybody knows, personal property is no longer taxable, so that will not be included in the amount that will be abated. A little bit of background on the company. It was founded in 1950 and has been located in Macomb County since then. In 2000, the company moved its operations to Chesterfield Township, where it is currently headquartered. Again, it is owned by Mr. Bill Fisher, who purchased the company in 2013 after having been employed there for a number of years. The company, National Research, has become a national leader in strategic material reclamation services and provides a domestic supply of diamond, tungsten carbide, copper, silver, and other green energy materials into the marketplace. The company has a unique position as one of the few companies in the U.S. able to produce these strategic resources as well as provide them into the supply chain. So unless you have any questions for me about the tax abatement program or anything like that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill and let him tell you a little bit more about what him and his company are doing. Thank you. Bill.
Thank you. As Jim said, I'm Bill Fisher, owner of National Research Company. National Research Company started as a reclaimer out of a post-war effort to reclaim tungsten carbide tooling, get the abrasives out of that. As of late, we've developed a very unique process to take carbide as well as super alloys, which are in the aerospace and automotive industry, and remove and refine battery-ready and green economy metals. You may have heard of this process going on around the country. All of the other people doing this are using existing batteries that they're recycling. We're using this unique process, and when the facility is completed, we'll be the only ones in the country doing this process with this technology. So this facility, the purpose of it is to be a pilot plant. We're looking to create many more plants to develop this in different streams, but this will also serve as our R&D and tech center here, where we can proof out different processes, different technologies, and expand as the market continues to grow, as we all see that growing in the next decades to come. So immediately, on the application, I was very conservative. Immediately this year, 10 employees at a minimum. Over the next 1 or 2 years, we're looking probably for another 5, 10, 15 employees to add to that number at the facility as it will allow. So open to any questions about the business, about the application, if you might have that, but that's kind of the general overview.
I'll bring it back up to the board. Any questions from the board? No questions from the board? Trustee Mossberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Did I hear, just now you said you anticipate more employees than what's on the application? I think what I saw in there was currently
10, so we put 10 as immediately. When we open, we're going to start searching. We've already actually started searching for some of those now because of the labor problems that we're having. But over the next few years, 1 to 2 years, we'll have 5 to 10 for sure that we're going to have to bring in once some of the technologies are built in place and ready to produce.
So another 10?
Yeah, I would guess.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sounds like a interesting.
Yeah, we're very excited about it.
Yeah,
yes,
very exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public? I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing? Any comments from the public?
Okay. Just some questions on your process. Basically, you're a salvager of different materials. I know different processes around.
Mr. Kadish, if you would address the board.
Okay. Now you'll answer my questions then. Does the process involve, I've seen processes around the country, basically where we're recouping copper wire, things like that, where they have to strip the vinyl and everything else, anything that's attached to this metal that they want. Basically, what happens is they do that, and then there's the process, how do they get rid of that material? And I just wondered what was involved in the process and what happens to the material that they don't use or recognize. Is there a possibility it may go down the drain? Is it a possibility the process put something into the air, which I'm sure you'd have to go through the state for their requirements there, but I'd be interested to know just what's involved and is there anything that's going to harm our community that way, the environment.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public?
I have actually no problem answering that. So we are fully permitted, both by the Great Lakes Water Authority, have weekly checks coming out from them, EPA, EGLE, all of the certifications. It's actually a zero emissions process that we've developed. So we have not sent out any scrap in the last 4 years since we've started refining this product. We use everything and refine it into products that go into the EV market, even down to the carbon, which we're looking at cathodes and anodes for the batteries themselves. So every single part, we're actually even looking at recapturing the hydrogen that's produced for generators and using solar so that it's a net neutral facility.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public?
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. I want to thank Mr. Fisher for staying in Chesterfield. And out of the, say, between the additional 10 more people that you're going to hire, I'm just curious how many we're going to prioritize from Chesterfield here. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? No further comments from the public. Bring it back up to the board. Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing at 7:36.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg to close the public hearing. Clerk Berry, would you call the roll?
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8B, public hearing.
Item 8B is to hold a public hearing for June 28th, 2022, to hear comments on an application for an Industrial Facilities Exemption Certificate, IFEC, for real property and personal property submitted by Prevez Plastic Injection Molding and Assemblies, Inc., located at 30002 Commerce Boulevard, Chesterfield Township, Michigan, 48051.
Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing at 7:37 p.m.
Support.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Public hearing is open at 8:37. Is the petitioner here?
There we go. Greg Icabelli, 53639 Christie Drive, Chesterfield, Michigan. I'm here representing Chesterfield 5, who is the developer and property owner for the future Prevez Plastics building that we're here to ask for a ICT certificate tonight. And Dave Hoskins is the operations manager. Mike Prevzano, the owner, was not able to attend tonight. And just give a little background on these guys have, as long as I've known, they've been with us since 2004 here in Chesterfield. We're building them a new facility up at North Bay at 26 Mile Road and Gratiot. They're currently on Russell Schmidt and on Russell Schmidt Boulevard on one of the older buildings. The building they're in currently is 17,000 square feet. We're going up to a 32,000 square foot building with future expansion capabilities of another 8,000 feet. So it'll take the building to 40,000 square feet sometime, hopefully in the future. So they're basically doubling the size. The cost of the real property improvements is gonna be about $1.7 million. The new equipment will be about $600,000, so it'll be about a $2.3 million investment. They currently are gonna maintain 55 jobs there and add an approximate another 30 within the next 2 years. So we're looking to ask for the maximum tax abatement that's available that'll keep them viable and help them grow and sustain. And Dave, he's here, he can answer any questions on their operation.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's David Hoskins. Answer any questions if you like.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the board, questions from the board? No questions from the board? I'll open it up to the public. Comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Trustee Joseph.
Hey, Mr. Hoskins, could you just tell us a little bit about what you do over there?
Yeah, so we do injection molding. We supply a lot of automotive parts for the big three, also Honda, Toyota. We're looking to expand, so we're a growing company, looking to invest in the community and bring jobs to the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the board?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Trustee Demink makes a motion to close the public hearing, supported by trustee Joseph at 7:42. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9A, regular agenda. Clerk Berry.
Item 9A is the consideration of an application for an industrial facilities exemption certificate submitted by National Research Company located at 55911 Gratiot Avenue, Chesterfield Township, Michigan, 48051. Approval of abatement agreement and adopt resolution number 2022-19.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Joseph, supported by trustee Vosberg. Comments from the board? Discussion from the board. Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor, I would like to ask our assessing department, if possible, our assessor, to brief the board. As she mentioned in her materials and executive summary that were submitted to the board had a prior criteria that we have previously used for IFECs, and we just now adopted an updated, more progressive and fair schema that was recommended by the assessing department. So I was wondering if assessor could give us just a brief overview of what we did have, what we have now, and if this applicant, because they applied under the previous protocol, how that will work, and then how that affects the township in terms of the number of years that this applicant would qualify for under each scenario, as well as kind of just walk us through that a little bit, because we do have a change, and just so the board's aware, so that when we do go to fill that information in on our resolution 2022-19, the board is fully aware, so when they make their determination on number of years, they are doing it fully aware of the options for the
Absolutely.
applicant.
Director Buveka, please, if you would.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. On the screen is our updated criteria. Like Clerk Berry had mentioned, we did have criteria that was already in place. This criteria was just merely updated in 3 different categories, where the increased cost of construction, there were new changes because of the cost of construction for investment. So those years, the dollar amount was adjusted slightly. New changes in the law under Act 198 that was applied in December 31st of 2021, that any personal property that qualifies as eligible manufacturing shall not be approved by an IFEC certificate. And that's from the state. And both of these applicants have personal property on their application, and they do not qualify because they will be filing an EMP, which is an eligible manufacturing personal property with the ESA, with the essential services. They'll be filing in lieu of getting a personal property IFTA. So because the 2 applicants manufacture a product, they do industrial processing or direct integrated support, which according to Act 198 doesn't qualify for the personal property abatement. The last paragraph on the criteria is new green technology. So as I reviewed other municipalities and what they do with their abatements and how they grant them, they actually have an incentive that Chesterfield Township board members may want to adopt, is an incentive for having that green technology with written permission from the building department. With their approval, they would qualify through it's called Green Building Council, which they have their own point system on the material that they put in for the building that qualifies for that green building technology would award them an additional year for the abatement. So that's something the board could look at adopting. Now, this criteria was in place prior. We're asking to formally adopt it, the board to adopt this criteria. And how it works is depending on what type of building they're building. Like if we walk through national research, they're building an R&D building, so they get 3 years is the recommended year of abatement. They're investing, for real property, they're investing $2.2 million, so they get 2 years additional recommended years. For the number of employees, now originally on their application, like Trustee Vosberg had mentioned, that they had 10 employees, but now it might be 15, so that would be 2 additional years. So add them together, they would qualify for 8 years of abatement. And that's how the criteria works. This has been the same criteria, it's just, again, updated in 3 different categories. We also are going to ask for applicant to provide a UIA 1017 it's a wage study of how many employees they actually retain. And we're going to, every year, we're going to ask for those applicants to provide that statement to us so that they are required to abide by this agreement. So it's something that it shows no favoritism. We're all doing the same for each applicant. So it's very objective. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Currently, we're talking about the national research one, right?
That is
Yes,
So,
that is
all right,
correct.
All right, so specific to that, did you say 2.2 million was the real estate?
That is the real property.
Real property, so shouldn't that be 3 years?
3 years. So
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought I
3,
heard you
3.
say 2, but you might have said 3.
Okay.
And then, so the employees, should their application be amended, or do we just honor whatever their 1017 shows as what they would get
It
then?
could be amended because they're going to have to sign the agreement for the IFEC application to go send to the state.
So at what stage does that get amended?
Well, they have to come and sign the agreement. They're going to sign that application this week. They can sign it and they can amend it at that time.
Does that have to come back to us?
No.
Okay, because we've
The next
established
step
the
is a vote.
criteria, so then you would just plug in the numbers
That
based
is
on the
correct.
criteria. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
I think maybe the appropriate step, I'd like to amend my motion, and I would ask, given that what's before us has no numbers with regard to the years, so the agreement is not really completed, and the petitioner could ask for something other than what the assessor believes they're entitled to. They could say that we'd like to make a claim for more years, and maybe there's a disagreement on the criteria. What I would like to do is offer a motion that approves the abatement agreement as notated by our Director of Assessing. So that whatever the years, according to the criteria that we've drafted, are what the board is actually voting on. And then if there's an amendment made after the petitioner maybe meets with the assessor, that I guess what I'm saying is the spirit of this is to give the authority to our assessing director to establish the criteria and then the corresponding years of abatement. And that would be the agreement that I would like continued support on, and then we could have the numbers filled in by the director.
Mr. Supervisor, if I may?
Please.
The board determines the number of years. The assessor will go through the criteria and give you her recommendation as to where the years fall based on the criteria. Applicants generally want the maximum number regardless of your criteria,
Sure,
because if you don't ask for it, you can't get it.
yeah.
And then the board makes their decision as to the number of years based on what your assessor recommends and based on what you hear from the applicant.
So just to be clear, so the reason, the no votes on the previous discussion on the abatements was the lacking of the criteria. That was where we were at, and this criteria was folded into this process, and it comes to us, I guess I'm a little confused. If that's the policy that we're going to adopt, why not just include the years with the abatement? Because the packet and the agreement that we have in our packet does not include years. So I guess I'm just looking to clarify that the years will be filled in based on the assessor's belief in the criteria and the number of years that she believes they're eligible for.
The reason it's not filled in?
Yes.
Is because the number of years ultimately is decided by this board at your meeting. So your motion to approve the abatement agreement, if that is approved, if that's your motion, will include the number of years, whether it's for 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, or 12 years.
I don't know of anybody on this board
The
that,
assessor could make a recommendation in this package, right on
Yes.
the criteria that she's presented in the agenda item. She could say, based on our scoring criteria, this is what the years could be.
And she
And
did.
then the
She said,
board
based
would-
on this scoring criteria, the years would be 8. But
Yes.
this board can go
but
with
there are a
that.
number of other areas, so I guess what I'm saying is this is an all-encompassing. I'm content to allow the assessor, or the assessor's recommendation to act as the years, and then in future considerations for these things, the abatement agreement will come with the assessor's recommendation, so the years would already be filled in. And if a board member has a substantial disagreement, but going the other way, I don't know anybody on this board that can honestly make an assessment about, without a much bigger discussion. And that's what the department head does. So if there's an issue that somebody thinks should be more or less, they can bring it, but we'll start as a point of contact. The jumping off point will be the assessor's, assessment of the criteria, and the years will come pre-filled. It's not, I don't want to ask to postpone until they are. I think I'm confident that we can just fill it out with the discretion given to the assessor to fill them in based on the calculations that she's arrived at.
Understood. Any further comment? Trustee Domingue?
So let me get this straight. Director Bouvet, you're recommending 8 years, is that what I heard before?
That is based on the original criteria that we had in place. It was
Okay.
just never formally adopted.
Okay, so that, but based on your calculations, your recommendation to us is 8 years
That
for
is
an
correct.
IFEC? Okay.
Trustee Rossberg?
You okay with it? On Kerry's recommendation?
But there's a couple of, if you look at, I'm asking you to look at page 93, and you see there are a number of areas in the agreement where the number of years, have to be input. So there are a few areas that I'm saying, next time I'd like it filled out based on Kerry's assessment and Ms. Bouvet's assessment. On this one, whatever it is that she believes goes in here, and if there's reconsideration because we have additional employees, I'm comfortable with whatever she assesses as the approved abatement agreement.
Can I
Now-
interrupt just for a minute? Just so you understand, when we did this, when we discussed this at the last board meeting, this was putting together the criteria and the policy of how we want to move forward doing this. And I understand exactly what you're saying, Trustee Joseph and Trustee Domingue. I believe as this recommendation of number of years should come from the assessing department based on their expertise and criteria that is presented tonight. So I understand where you're going both ways, and I'd like to get that formality solidified tonight. Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The board has already adopted this criteria in its consent agenda, so that's done. Perhaps what would make more sense at this time is for the maker of the motion to consider amending his motion to approve the abatement agreement and adopt resolution 2022-19 for X number of years, and just say for 8 years, amend the motion, so then it says for however many years the motion maker would like, and if it's the recommendation of the assessor, then that would be 8 years in this case, and then the board can go ahead and vote on that amended motion.
So my motion is basically to allow her to fill it. I don't know, there's like 6 spots on here that are blank, and I'm not prepared to go through and say, this should be 6, and this should be 5. Whatever the assessor thinks it should be, based on the criteria that we approved, is my motion.
The number of years has to be specified in the motion because it has to be specified in the resolution. Carrie has indicated that the criteria calls for 8 years.
Okay?
The 8 years, we will fill that in. We will fill in the appropriate blanks based on that, your motion and the number of years.
That was my motion, but if we're gonna fill in the blanks, let's fill in the blanks. So in the next paragraph, you have the consideration of the township's approval, company's application for industrial facilities exemption for a period of, that is also 8 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's 2 8s. Then in number 3, the abatement period again, 8 years.
Correct.
And then, my last question is, that's, all the blanks are filled in. Is that consistent with the petitioner's ask? And is there any, we did switch criteria from application to, so understanding if that's acceptable is of interest to me.
So the motion is to approve the abatement agreement for a period of 8 years as presented in the draft resolution.
Yes.
The motion by trustee Joseph, still supported by trustee Vosberg?
Yeah. Yes, it is. I'll still support it, but I don't need more comment.
Please comment, please.
Okay. So we have this green thing at the bottom, and we're saying if, it looks like it's, my understanding was if they show proof of green technology, they can also be awarded an additional 1-year abatement. Is that supposed to be submitted at the time of the building permit process, or is this, can this be something that after they've been in the process, they show it, after it's completed, they can show you?
That can be submitted 120 days after their construction is complete. However, the application has to go to the state. So we would have to have something in writing, and the building department would approve it. And I did talk to Gary in the building department, and he said there's criteria through the Green Council, Green Building Council, that he abides by. We do not currently have any green technology buildings in the township.
Okay, but it's not something you have to bring back to us for, it's already
No.
in the code somewhere.
They would
Right.
have to provide that written documentation that they're going to abide by that,
Okay,
yes.
did they,
I do not have any information that they indicated that they were going to do the green building technology.
can we ask now?
Is the petitioner here? Please, if you would.
It's our full intention to examine it and make sure we qualify for that. Since we just got these rules on Friday, we haven't had time to go through and examine enough to say yes, for sure, 100%, but definitely, we're going to
Okay,
explore
so
that as much
then-
as to our ability.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. So if they do that, then we've got 9 years. Right?
Carrie, I believe she said she can't qualify that until,
Okay, but it has to be submitted as, assuming that it's going to comply? How does that work?
If they have written documentation provided to the building department, then yes, they could qualify for an additional year. We don't know what criteria they're going to have. Yes, it did come at the last minute, yes.
So I realize tonight's two things are a little different because of how we're doing it, but in the future, would this green be part of the
We would have that on
application?
the application, that is correct.
So do you need 9 years then?
if that's what they are going to indicate that they're doing. Now, depending on what their green technology is. I don't know with
Okay, but
the building department official would have to review that with the Green Council, Building Council to see if it's applicable.
Correct. So for sure, we're agreeing on 8 years. We're agreeing on if they comply with the green, they can get 1 more year. So at what point do we,
That they may have
can we
to
do
come-
that content, can we say 8 years with an additional 1 year for green technology if it qualifies, or something to that effect? Because if they only go with if they bring, I'm not clear on that. I want them to get everything they're entitled to get. And I'm sure everyone here does, so, but we don't want it hung up on something later.
I would recommend that you determine a specific number of years tonight, because if you do it conditionally, and you submit it to the state that way, and the state rejects it, then they're out of luck.
Can they get an additional year later?
Can they, I guess, can
I
they
don't
amend
recommend
it?
that. I don't
No,
recommend that.
you don't recommend them applying for another year later with the green?
I don't believe they can.
No.
It's either that set amount of years.
Correct. And if you approve it conditionally and the state rejects it, then they've lost it.
Can they amend their request then to include that 1 year
Tonight?
tonight?
Absolutely, they can, but if they haven't submitted the correct documentation to Carrie, she doesn't have a chance to look at it, then she's got nothing to offer an opinion on.
Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Joseph.
I know exactly where trustee Vosberg is going, but if we don't, I guess the better question right now, if they qualify for 8, we take a vote on 8, it sounds like there's little likelihood for them to capture the 9th year once it, leaves the board, that it's going to go to the state with 8, and there's no, attaching asterisk potentially has them, out in the cold. They began the process, they came to the podium and said, we just got this on Friday. If it's beneficial for them to take a look at how they want to submit the application and bring it back in 2 weeks, we could consider, I think, a better view of the extra year. If it's more interest to them to come forward and take a vote on the 8 years, but I guess I'm saying they started the process under one sort of set of criteria, and then we, added our conditions here. We're doing it's a little awkward. So I'd like to see them have an opportunity to decide if we're going to take a vote on 8 and send it with what we believe to be appropriate criteria, or they'd like a couple of weeks to take a look at it and see how strongly they feel about the 9th. And I'd really like to hear from them, and then
If the petitioner would like to address that at the podium, please. Again, the option you have is voting on the 8 tonight that's presented, or you can have us, we can table this for 2 weeks, where we can consider an extra year for you.
After talking with Bill real briefly here, asking him if he knows what the green technology is that has to be incorporated into the building, and understanding that it has to come from the building department. Have you seen anything on this? No. So I think my suggestion would be if we could table this for a couple of weeks, is that okay with you? So that he has an opportunity to get this information from the building department or from the state. He can review it and then go over it again with his architect and his construction company. Because right now, we're shooting in the dark, basically. Okay, you don't know what the green technology is. He doesn't know what the green technology is. And I'm gonna bet you $1,000 the state doesn't know what the green technology is. Okay? So, that being said, my recommendation would be, let's table this for tonight and just do a little bit of research, due diligence, so that when it goes to the state, it has exactly the number of years that you guys want to give this gentleman. Because the state isn't good at changing things. They're not very flexible. And I've got some other words I could use, but it's hard to deal with them sometimes. So I'd rather it be taken care of at this level, because we're the ones that know the company. We know what we're trying to do. And I think if we're all on the same page, it's going to make it a lot simpler for the company if we say, hey, we're going to give you 9 years or we're going to give you 8 years. So I would just prefer, that would be my suggestion, that we table it for a couple of weeks.
Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Clerk
Supervisor, I'm sorry, we were just,
Trustee Joseph.
I'd like to make a motion to postpone until the July 28th meeting, and just looking at timelines, I don't know that the clerk can get this meeting posted and open meetings, so it might be best to go a month to allow that to happen, and during that time, the petitioner can find out from building, exactly where we're at. So motion to postpone until July 28th.
Clerk Berry.
I have a question for council. Council, if this motion passes, are we then required to set another public hearing and start the process over again, or have we already
No.
satisfied that requirement tonight?
You've satisfied that requirement tonight.
Thank you.
And it looks to me that the application was received on June 3rd, so July 28th will work, because the board has to render a decision within 60 days.
That was my next question. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor,
Trustee Vosper.
I have a question. Does that date work with the petitioner?
Mr. Ahe.
I personally am already scheduled to be out of the country on the 28th of July.
Will it, time?
It's my suggestion, is talking with the two gentlemen here, is we approve the 8 years, we wait on that application, and if he can come up with the other information to justify the 9th year, we'll then submit the application as the 9th. Approve it at 8 now. If we have to come back to another meeting,
Trustee Vosper.
If they're satisfied with that, and that will get them that other 1 year, so in other words, you would not submit the application to the state until you knew for sure whether it's 8 or 9 years?
we have 60 days to submit it to the state.
Gotcha. All right. I'm okay. And then allowing our assessor, Ms. Bouvet, to make that final determination on that last year? Is that your?
No, it'll have to come back to the board.
Has
The
to come back,
resolution has
right.
to be adopted by the board.
Okay. But for sure they'll have 8, if,
Right.
for sure they have 8. If they want the 9th year, they've got to come back.
Correct.
All right.
Clerk Berry.
So just to be clear and to restate the motion that I have on the record, Mr. Chairman, you can confirm that's on the table. And that is a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve an IFEC for National Research Company located at 55911 Gratiot Avenue, Chesterfield Township, Michigan, 48051. Approval of abatement agreement and adopt resolution number 2022-19 for a period of 8 years.
Correct.
Thank you.
From a parliamentary standpoint, we're a little bit of a mess. We have a motion to postpone, which I'll withdraw, and I would offer the motion as stated by the clerk and ask for continued support.
Trustee Vosberg, support. Continued support. Comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Any further comments from the board? I have a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to a agreement for 8 years. Clerk Berry, would you please?
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
I apologize for that, Trustee Joseph. I should have asked to remove the previous motions. I'll get better at it again. Item 9B, Clerk Berry.
Item 9B is to consider an application for Industrial Facilities Exemption Certificate, IFEC, submitted by Prevez Plastic Injection Molding and Assemblies, Inc., located at 30002 Commerce Boulevard, Chesterfield Township, Michigan, 48051, and approval of abatement agreement and to adopt resolution number 2022-21.
Similar to the previous one. Director Bouvet, would you like to address this again?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second?
A motion to approve by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Clerk Berry.
Okay, again, for previs plastic injection molding. They would qualify under two years for manufacturing. Because they're investing 1.7, it's another 2 years, and their employees are 30 jobs, that would be 3 for a total of 7 years.
Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Joseph.
I guess my, having watched that, transpire, is the petitioner content with the 7-year? Are there any challenges or concerns about the criteria scoring? And if the petitioner is satisfied with the 7, I would ask that we just do what we did on the last one and fill it in on the document and take a vote on that. So first things, is the petitioner satisfied with the assessment?
Yes, we'll be content with the 7.
Great.
Any further comments from the board? No comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Clerk Beard.
I'd like to ask the motion maker if she would amend her motion to adopt resolution number 2022-21 for a period of 7 years, and I will continue support.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? No further comments from the board. Clerk Beard, would you call the roll?
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8C.
Thank you.
Item 8C is to approve a request to transfer a Class C liquor license and specially designated merchant liquor license SDM with Sunday sales permit AM from Ryan Clark, deceased, to William Richter for Sugarbush Tavern located at 27900 21 Mile Road, Chesterfield, Michigan 48047, and adopt resolution number 2022-18.
I'll
Motion
make
to
a motion to
approve.
approve.
Support.
Elliott, support. Comments from the board?
Yes.
Any comments from the board? Clerk Beard.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd just like to again inform the board and the public that having received this request and application, that the applicant has met all necessary requirements and all have been provided to you in your packet.
Thank you, Clerk Beard. Very well. Okay. Comments from the public? Any comments from the public? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 8C. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 8D.
Item 8D is to adopt proclamation number 2022-10 to designate July as Parks and Recreation Month.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Supported by Trustee Demink.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Berry, would you read the proclamation?
Charter Township of Chesterfield, number 2022-10 proclamation to designate July as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas the Charter Township of Chesterfield, Michigan recognizes the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of business, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas Chesterfield Township recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore on this 28th day of June 2022, and on behalf of the Charter Township of Chesterfield, State of Michigan, the Township Board of Trustees does hereby proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month.
Thank you, Clerk Barry. Comments from the board? Seeing no comments from the board, comments from the public? Comments from the public? I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve the proclamation 8D as read. Clerk Barry?
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 8E.
Item 8E is to approve a request by Public Works to execute the water service contract between Great Lakes Water Authority, GLWA, and the Charter Township of Chesterfield.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as stated.
Supported by Supervisor Kersten. Mr. O'Connor, welcome.
Good evening. This contract, GLWA provides our water to the township. It's the old Detroit water system. This contract is renewed / negotiated every 4 years. So the last time it was before the board was 2018. The 4 years is up. There were a couple of minor changes from the 2018 contract. The max day was decreased from 8.75 to 8.24 million gallons per day. And the peak hour was increased from 12 to 12.5 million gallons per day. So those changes are reflected based on 4 years of metering data from 2018 to 2022. So they'll be used for the next 4 years going forward. Then after that 4-year period, we'll review those numbers and see if they can be changed. There is an effort to reduce the peak hour. Our peak hour happens from 6 to 7 a.m. And we think it's a result of sprinkler systems still running, probably in the larger developments like condos. So we are going to revise our watering time from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. to try and reduce that peak hour over the next 4 years.
Thank you, sir. Just a comment from me. I sat in a couple on these videos, and it's an interesting negotiating process. So with that being said, any comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
That's a very generous assessment of what that process is, because there is no negotiation, there are no other options. Everybody here knows that, I won't belabor it. My question basically it's the same contract as we approved in 2018 with the modifications regarding the watering times. Those could have a big impact with some of the larger, condo associations and different things. How do we let the customer know? How do we let our residents know? Because they could think they're watering at a off-peak rate, and in fact, they're now on a peak rate, which could substantially change things. So do we have anything in place to, other than this meeting, to notify the water customers?
It will be placed on the July bills. It's going to be placed on all the bills, starting in the month of July. We're also going to coordinate with Amanda, I can't say her last name, Metapedigan, to make sure it gets broadcast socially using the tools and techniques she uses also.
So I noticed on the bill, the water rates are there. I mean, the watering times, and, I might look right past that. Maybe like red, asterisk, something, notice of change, because that could be a big, especially if you have people watering without the irrigation meter, so they're paying premium rate on the sewer as well. And so it could get costly, but maybe, put some jazz hands on it or whatever, on that water bill so they can see the change has been made.
Yeah.
Trustee Joseph, you're absolutely, we're working on that internally to highlight that, and then also there potentially is an ordinance change based on some odd even representation. So We're doing everything we can as fast as we can to make sure that the residents get this message.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. So, the larger people that use a lot of water probably know that and know to look for it. We don't want to assume anything, so it's good that we have a method in place to notify them. But does that also pertain to any user of the water? Should they irrigate or use water during the non-peak time, that they would get a better rate?
Yeah, we are recommending
So that can be for everyone?
for everybody,
Right,
yes.
So you could get up
for
and
everybody.
set your alarm for 3 to take your shower or something like that?
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public?
Paul LaFata, 48055 Mallard. Nothing's free, and back in 2014, AEW did a study to put a water tower in somewhere around 24 Mile Road, which is one of the highest elevations in the township, for the reason to not get fined and not to have to pay higher costs for peak water rates. Studies probably collecting dust, never happened, but at Township, payers paid $7,600 for that study. I don't know how that impacts this, but also in your packet, you'll see the 5 primary meters, and then those primary meters go to the user meters for the township. And in the water rate costs, there's a 3% loss calculated in our cost per thousand. And nothing's been done to fix that. And I'm assuming that that would reduce the water peak. But I'm still to the belief, from what I was told previously, that the higher peak that we commit to is going to cost us more in our water rate cost per 1,000 gallons. And we're not doing anything proactive. All we're doing is increasing it. And if we increase it, there's probably no cost on the contract, but it's going to be a cost to the residents. And if we can spend $8 million on a sewer line that doesn't benefit the residents, why can't we spend some money to fix what's broken? And if we fix what's broken, we won't have to increase our peak. And there shouldn't be any more added cost to our commodity charges. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. Could we make some sort of announcement tonight to let the residents know what the peak rate is and the off-peak hour? Because we've got sprinklers that people are using every day, so maybe we could put something out there tonight to make them aware of it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Just a quick comment, the water tower conversation and study's been looked at. It's something that's been resurrected, and it's probably something that this township's gonna have to look into in the future.
Along with that contract that you're putting out there, or signing, the other thing that's gonna hit, you have to tell the people, and I don't know how much work has been done, or if anything, but there's obviously gonna be regular water rates coming along probably this month or next month. Have those been calculated? Nobody wants to answer? Because that's gonna be a big number from what I'm seeing, from past history. I think before you sign this, you ought to look at the whole thing and see how much money is going to be passed on to the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public? Obviously, the water rates is still a point of contention. It still hasn't been discussed or released exactly what that percentage increase is. Mitch, have you had any update on that?
They're still hashing out the effect of
The Highland Park
Highland
matter.
Park. Highland Park. Something is imminent, though.
We'll bring it back up to the board. Any comments from the board? Any further comments from the board? Have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to execute the GLWA water service contract. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 10, addendums. There are no addendums. Item 11, public comments. There is a 5-minute time limit. The clock will start when you begin to speak.
I'm going to start off with, after the last meeting, where the agenda item, you people agreed to purchase new assault rifles, passed it. I think there were 18 of them involved. And I sent a request through the way it's set up on the webpage, basically asking that when you buy these new rifles, that you don't sell the old rifles. Number one, if there's no good, they shouldn't be out there. Number two, don't want them on the streets. And I think as a police force or the regular community shouldn't want them either. I've heard nothing back on that request. I sent an email, and I included you, Supervisor Kersten, saying the same thing. Why, if we haven't, why would we want to sell these things and get them out in the street? I've not heard anything back. It's 2 weeks. So your way of sending questions through the webpage doesn't work. Number two, as Clerk Berry said, there's 2 petitions going around in the township, one for the cannabis and one for a petition to get a referendum on the ballot against the bonding issue that you guys approved. In going about that, those of us that are involved in it had no knowledge of how these things get written, what to put on them, what type of format it was. So we essentially came to Clerk Berry. And for about 2 or 3 days, got a runaround saying that, you know, the county handles that. Well, we went to the county. Took 2 or 3 days, or maybe more, to get notice back from the county. County has nothing to do with the wording on that. And we came back here. Paul LaFada had put something together and asked Attorney Siebert just to look at it. Say, does this meet the criteria? And essentially he said he couldn't do that because it's in conflict with the fact that he represents the board. I don't see a contract. I mean, to look at a contract or obligation like that, he should be able to represent the public as well as the board. There's no conflict between the two of them, other than the fact they want to just sell the bonds. We want to put a referendum out there. I see a big issue there. He should have responded to us. And essentially, Paul somehow got something. Finally, after what, 2 weeks, put it together. And it started before we even knew about it. The notice was put in the sports section of the Voice. So it was a week and a half before anybody even knew that the notice was that. And when that was going on, I had asked the clerk and the board, basically like you do with the police millage, send a notice to everybody involved that that was happening. That didn't happen, but you managed to hide something in the sports section of the Voice so that nobody knew about it. So essentially we are, right now, finally got something together, and we've got 3 weeks to get petitions signed, where initially we had 45 days, but we lost 2 weeks out of that because of the playing games and everything that we're doing here. Now, Clerk Berry didn't have any problem with the cannabis committee in that. In fact, I understand she's out there getting signatures on the cannabis committee. This is really getting screwed here. We're not here to try and change things you want to do. We want to be able to let the public know what's going on and give them a choice in it. And you're not doing that. The same way that things don't get answered here. People come up and ask questions, we don't get an answer. Something's got to change. Thank you.
Further comments from the public?
Good evening, Chesterfield residents and Township Board. My name is John Spica. I'm running for supervisor in Chesterfield Township. I'm an individual that can manage, lead, and bring fiscal responsibility back to Chesterfield. I reside at 53978 Connor Drive. Just a reminder to all the residents that we have a supervisor's race going on right now in Chesterfield. The primary is August 2nd. The absentee ballots have been sent out and are starting to arrive daily. The candidates running for Chesterfield Supervisor are myself, John Spica, Paul LaFata, Joe Kadich, and Michelle Fitch. Make sure you get out and vote. This election is important. This election is too important not to vote. Our Township Board Supervisor, Bradley Kersten, continues to operate Chesterfield Township in a fiscally irresponsible and reckless manner. For the past 11 months, he's done more damage to this township than I could tell you in 5 minutes. For starters, the board-appointed supervisor, Bradley Kersten's 22 budget was approved with a general fund annual operating deficit of $1.2 million in the negative, which is the red. Our board-appointed supervisor says he's fiscally conservative, and listening to the residents is his #1 priority. What a joke. Don't be fooled by his lies and misinformation. He's far from being fiscally conservative. He's a tax and spend and waste the taxpayers' money politician that speaks out of both ends and could care less what the residents have to say. Our board-appointed supervisor at the last township meeting voted to spend $26,000 on a half-gallon of paint to stencil Chesterfield on an overpass. The stenciling looked more like graffiti than anything else. He said this is an opportunity that MDOT presented to us. Even Clerk Barry didn't see the value in spending $26,000. Trustee Deming even said it looked tacky. Resident Michael Wharton said it looks like window dressing and, dare I say, almost like graffiti, and the colors don't even represent the township. An ugly blue that looks tacky. Former treasurer candidate for supervisor, Mr. Paul LaFata, said an advertisement for $26,000, no real direct benefit for the residents that live here. This was a perfect example of the county, again, telling the board-appointed supervisor what to do. Then our board-appointed supervisor went on to spend another $9,085.70 on replacing board chairs. This was added to the deficit. Trustee Joseph said, I really don't know where we get the money. We just don't have the money. Candidate Paul LaFata for supervisor said seniors have complained that they don't have benches to sit on. Our board-appointed supervisor continues his spendemic by voting for a lobbying firm to come into Chesterfield in the amount of $4,000 a month for 6 months, which comes out to $24,000, a budget amendment which is adding more money to our deficit. The final straw for me was at the June 14th, 22 Chesterfield Township Board meeting when the board-appointed supervisor, Bradley Kersten, who for starters, 1, doesn't own a house in Chesterfield Township, 2, doesn't pay property taxes on a house in Chesterfield Township, and 3, uses a friend's address in Chesterfield to sit in the supervisor's seat, has the audacity to recommend the purchase of a $13 million bond on the backs of the tax-paying residents of Chesterfield. As my grandmother would say, that's a bullshit. The board members that were in favor of passing the bond and raising the residents' property taxes and water rates were appointed Supervisor Bradley Kersten, Clerk Barry, Treasurer Elliott, Trustee Vosberg, and Trustee DeBing. Payment sources, who will pay when questioned, were never defined by the board-appointed supervisor. $8 million plus interest for the next 20 years of Chesterfield residents' taxpaying dollars will be spent on a sewer line on 26 Mile that will not benefit the current residents in Chesterfield. Chesterfield residents will pay for a sewer line for developers and builders on the north end of the township. Board-appointed Supervisor Kersten sold the residents and the township out to the developers and builders on the north end of Chesterfield. Board-appointed Supervisor Kersten acts more like a socialist who takes direction from the county and not the residents he says he wants to represent. In my opinion, he's a socialist with autocratic tendencies who likes to use intimidation as a weapon against his political rivals. Bradley Kersten can't be trusted and needs to be sent back to Emmett.
Thank you, sir. Further comments from the board or public?
Paul Lafata, 48055 Mallard. I guess I was lucky. There was a bond posting on the 8th. There was a board meeting on the 14th. Nothing mentioned about the posting. And I was lucky, I guess I found it on the 19th by mistake in the sports section of the Anchor Bay Voice. I was a little upset, but I tried to react. I made 100 copies, and I walked Anchor Bay Harbor, Mallard, the street where I live, and I stopped at 97 homes, and I talked to 68 residents. Not one had an inkling that there was a bond out there that was affecting them. Not one. On the township website, we purchase lagoons, we post everything that is politically advantageous winds up on the township website. We don't post the S3 environmental study from Selfridge Air Force Base. We don't post bond notices. And our current township supervisor is claiming excellent communication to the residents. I guess a bond notice that affects just about every, ratepayer, and especially Anchor Bay, really isn't important to post on the township website. But that just goes to show you what we do post doesn't get to our residents. And on top of that, it is monumental to get a referendum, and I'll try my damnedest to stop this, but the township does what is politically advantageous for some of the members of the township board, and they really don't care about the residents, because if they did, they'd post information that really concerns them, what concerns them environmentally and financially, especially at this time with high inflation, and if we're not careful, we're going to roll into an inflation, or recession, I'm sorry, with the high inflation. And currently, it was not put in our current budget back in December when it was, authored. And we're going to suffer with more budget deficits before the end of the year. But our communication to the residents, very poor. I guess you want the residents to be able to react. So I kind of like throw my hands up, because I'm getting to the point where if it's politically advantageous, the board's all for it. If it's not, let's throw it under the carpet so nobody can see it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Mike Horton, 50393 Bauer. A few things tonight. Well, I wish everyone a happy early 4th of July, as I think the next meeting is after that occurrence. So happy Independence Day to everybody. It's going to be hopefully a good one. Hopefully no incidents. The thing I wanted to address, though, was I was fortunate to attend the parade on Sunday. It was a great turnout, and I saw a lot of people enjoy themselves for the Bayrama Fish Fly Festival, and it was good to see everybody out and about and having fun there and everything. I noticed, though, that the township didn't really have much of a presence there, and it's very saddening because, yes, even though it is New Baltimore, New Baltimore is pretty much carved out of Chesterfield, and if there's any community that would have a secondary presence to it, that type of event, Chesterfield would be primed for it. But I saw neighboring communities and ones further away, such as like Algonac, had more of a presence and reputation there rather than Chesterfield, and I thought that was a little disappointing. Aside from that, I keep on delving into the importance of learning about things regarding communitarianism and how Americans in general, or just humans in general, in the past coordinated and built up society. And more I see that huge disconnect here in this township. And I never really got an address from the board regarding what I had brought up a few meetings ago in regards to the plaques on the wall, and how there has been what seems to be a disconnect from having that continuous representation among even just small statured things. There doesn't really seem to be a recognition for volunteers or senior citizens or employees of this township, or in that nature as it was in the not too distant past. If we don't have that, then how can we properly represent ourselves as a community, and not so much as just a disjointed municipality that just exists? And I don't see that as much in other communities, whether they be neighboring or just in the county or metro area as a whole. There is a sense of community pride and community basis, and this place does not feel that way. Other than that, though, Trustee Joseph, you had mentioned the importance of training, breaking into, or gaining entry, forcible entry into certain things. And I will say that training is very valuable. I learned it both as a firefighter and in specialized military training for before being sent off to a war. That is valuable training that I do think the police would benefit highly from. And I'd also like to add to that something that I've always thought of, especially since I've taken on a personal basis, something that would help law enforcement out greatly would be having taxpayer-funded training regarding martial arts. And martial arts I've participated in were Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm currently in Aikido, and it is very helpful, great for stress relief, for physical exercise. It keeps everyone fit, and you also build up a good community of people, because you gain a lot of trust with people who you voluntarily let you beat up. And but aside from that, though, it is something I highly encourage for police departments to invest that type of training into. It would probably have to be done with a private practitioner for the dojo, but ultimately it is a valuable training resource, and for anything regarding nonviolent interventions. Aside from that, like I said, wish everyone a happy 4th of July, and adhere to proper fireworks regulations. Don't go crazy. And please don't blow off anyone's hands or start any fires. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments? Trustee Anderson, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Take the high road here. May 24th, by a 5-2 vote, this board recommended a $13+ million bond issue to be moving forward. We had another meeting since then. There was nothing mentioned about it. It was interesting back on that night how the board voted 5-2 not to have any board comments, no discussion. And then on June the 8th, it appears, we found out, thank you, Mr. LaFata, he gave me a call. About a week ago, he found it in the sports section of The Voice, the actual bond language. I know that's strictly coincidental that that would be placed in there, and there was no discussion. And now you're engaged into a period of time which is clicking away if a referendum does not, as not enough signatures are received. The discussion was already, or procedure was already mentioned. This board will be able to move forward and enter into that bond issue, and you, the residents, will have the privilege of paying it down. I'm not going to repeat what the other speaker said. I'll let it go right there. And as I said, I'm going to take the high road. Chief Bassett, I appreciate your comments at the beginning of the meeting regarding when you were asked to talk about the 4th of July fireworks. I'd ask people who, our residents, be a little considerate. Look at the time constraints when you those of you that like to play with the pyrotechnics, think of your neighbors' dogs. We have veterans out there. Just be considerate. I know they already started on Saturday, or yeah, Saturday and Sunday we're already celebrating. I don't know, we're adding more holidays all the time. Just kind of think of your neighbors when you do that, and have a good 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just going down in order, trying to answer some of the questions that were posed at the podium. First speaker talked about the agenda item involving the new rifles, and this idea of destroying the old weapons in order to get them off the street. They were never on the street ever, and they will go to a licensed federal firearm dealer. The idea that we would destroy assets, they have value. You know, they have value, significant value, and the cost of returning those weapons in a buyback situation, the cost of a carrier weapon, which was considerably higher priced. So there is no, they're not at the gun, they're not buying from the gun show, out of somebody's trunk. These are going back to a federal firearm licensed dealer, and destroying them would be a destruction of the township property that has value. So they don't go into the hands of gang members from whoever's selling the firearms. They're a licensed dealer. The petition issue was brought up by several speakers. I can see Clerk Berry's taking notes, so I believe she's probably going to address the voice placement. I'm going to make a wild prediction. The township cannot control the placement of where the ad goes in the paper. So if it ends up on the front or the back, top, above the fold, below, the cost is the same, and two, the statute is it needs to maintain the legal notice. And the vigorous nodding, I'll let her finish up from there. Not much to add. Mr. Speaker seems to have a direct path. That was a issue that involves campaign. So I didn't hear any questions to the board, at least directed to me. So I don't know that I have anything to add there. The comments regarding the things being done that are politically advantageous. I always get into trouble when I start challenging what I perceive to be the motive, and I have my own reasons for voting no on the bonds, and any other vote. I run into trouble when I start assuming somebody's intent behind them. So it doesn't really. I guess maybe next month it'll be appropriate with the 4th of July and fireworks, but outside of just creating that, it's getting more destructive. So just maybe citing a couple of reasons so that people understand why I vote the way that I vote, and I'll just leave it at that. The comments about Mr. Wharton regarding the presence in New Baltimore and the parade. There are people on the board who have been here a lot longer than me. I really only recall any New Baltimore presence The Historical Society had a float at one time, I believe. But other than that, it was the Miss Chesterfield float, and that was something that Parks and Rec did, and we would go to different, went up to Romeo for the Peach Festival, and you know, until Chesterfield gets a parade, I don't think you'll see a lot. I know that New Baltimore is very cordial with us. I had actually talked to the parade committee. I had a Mr. Chesterfield float ready to go, but at the last minute, the talent backed out, and yes, Mr. Anderson got a little shy, so he refused to let me haul him around on the Mr. Chesterfield float. And then the request and the idea of martial arts. I will talk to Director Bassett. Actually, as we all know, Captain McNair is pretty well-trained. Yes, he is sort of the Kung Fu Panda body type, I think. But he is a certified ninja, and maybe he's somebody you could tap into, Director Bassett. Thanks for reminding me of that, Supervisor Kersten. I forgot about that. On a more serious note, as it relates to the police department, I wanted to update the board and the public. We have Officer LeBeau, who continues to make progress. He's slow but sure, and he's got a very determined spirit. We've been in contact with him recently because if you can imagine, while we were in our homes, you know, reporting for duty via Zoom, police department, fire department, unless they've gotten some new features on that, you know, Zoom app, I don't think you can arrest anybody via Zoom. You can't bring bad guys into the station via Zoom. They tend not to want to come, and then, you know, there's some added responsibilities there, and all of our first responders met that challenge head on. So their day-to-day operations continued. Whatever the hazards that were presented to them before the pandemic, they had to deal with, and then a pandemic. So bad guys are not real compliant with the mask requirements. So, you know, you're exposed to all of the dangers plus COVID. And unfortunately, we had a number of employees who were quite sick. I don't think anybody more than Officer LeBeau. He overcame and fought valiantly, including being placed on a ventilator, and family and friends conducting candlelight vigils at the hospital and praying every day for him to be spared and to have more time with us. And those prayers were answered, and he is, of course, everybody knows, home now and recovering, but his bills are piling up. And it's unfortunate in talking with him today because of the governor's orders and emergency orders and rules regarding workman's comp or disability. He's found himself in a very, very bad situation in that he hasn't been paid and is receiving no income while the you know, insurance issues are worked out. I appreciate a conversation right before our meeting tonight with Supervisor Kersten. This isn't a finger pointing, and I'm not singling anybody out, but collectively, as a community, as a board, I don't know of a greater debt that is owed to the people like Officer LeBeau, who legitimately put their lives on the line, and I think it's fairly well documented. There is no dispute. He was COVID positive at roughly the same time as two of his fellow officers who were exposed at a training just prior, and thankfully they were able to weather the COVID much easier than Officer LeBeau. But he's a dedicated civil servant, and I don't know, you know, we don't agree on a lot of things, but I don't know of anybody on this board that doesn't believe Officer LeBeau is entitled to a debt of gratitude and the ability to to recover from his physical without the burden of the financial. And if we can't make that right, I don't know what in the hell we're doing up here, because that is a fundamental guarantee. Guy puts his life on the line for you, contracts COVID in the process while we're conducting business from home with masks. He's in a ventilator. We have to make that right, and I know that's complicated, and again, I appreciate Supervisor Kersten. We haven't agreed on much lately, but there is little doubt where we stand as it relates to guys like Officer LeBeau, and we'll get it fixed for him and for everybody else that's out there putting their lives on the line for our township. Appreciate the discussion tonight, and hopefully we can have more meetings, you know, that have considerate dialogue, even if there is disagreement. So thanks, and happy 4th to everybody.
Trustee Domingue.
First, I'd like to wish everybody a happy 4th of July, and I also agree with Trustee Anderson. Please be considerate of your neighbors, especially if they're military vets, and be considerate of animals. As everybody knows, I'm a big dog lover. Sometimes I've had to go camp out at Pollard Park with my pooch, so it doesn't sound like Afghanistan lately. I've tried some dog tranquilizers to get them to chill out in the basement. But please consider your neighbors and everything else, because sometimes it gets too crazy. I just saw LeBeau's sister Friday night at Bay Rama, Dave, and she told me the same thing, workman's comp's an issue, so I did talk to her about that. So, and lastly, I'd like to send my condolences out to retired Chesterfield police officer Bill Krul on the passing of his father, Bill Sr. He just died in the last 2 days. His dad worked with me at the Sheriff's Department. Bill retired in 1996 as a lieutenant. I worked with him on the Marine Division, Marine Patrol, road, everything else. After he retired in 96, he went up to St. Clair County and was the lieutenant of St. Clair County's Marine Patrol till 2010, and he did pass away. He will be laid out Thursday at Gendernalic Wazik at 23 in Jefferson from 2 to 7. So my condolences out to the Krul family and the loss of Bill Sr. I know Brad knew him too from our days when we were on the streets, but may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Trustee Mossberg.
Just reacting to the previous comment, Bill was also a very involved member of the Historical Society. I didn't know this, so that's okay. But I want to thank prospective Eagle Scout Adrian Carrion from Troop 343 for the work that he and his volunteers did on the Salt River. What they did was they made and placed signs that indicate zones, a green zone, a blue zone, orange zone, examples like that. And they placed them out on the waterway, along the shores of the waterway, so if there's somebody out there and needs help, and if they can identify where the region or the area they're at when they call 911, then when help goes out there, they can get to them more directly than just going up and down the river looking for them. So I think that's a very innovative project, and it's something that will be of benefit to our community for a long, long time. And the report I got is that they're also going to try to get those markers, I'm assuming, into a GPS type system so that, you know, make it more effective for the 911 service. So thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just want to wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July and a good night. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Yes, as Trustee Joseph alluded to, just for clarification, we do send all of our publications that are required to be posted or published in the language is typically a newspaper of general circulation. And when we send those over, they go over to the legal department for review. We have no control over where they publish them inside the actual publication. The fact that it's in the sports section actually typically would be a good thing. Usually that is the section, believe it or not, that is the most read after the front page of the newspaper. Some people actually skip everything and go right to the sports section. So, as has kind of been fairly alluded to, perhaps it would have been better to publish it on our social media website that I have, which is sports related, Between the Whistles Detroit, the Cindy and Joe show. We reach about 3 million people a month, so perhaps that would have been a better place to put that. But I understand just so everyone understands the comment on why it was put in the sports section, I had no control over that whatsoever. So we do send it over to legals and they put it wherever they want. However, in addition to that, as far as the clerk's office assistance on any petitions that are generated or circulated by non-candidates, so that's any type of referendum, that is any other type of legislative petition or local petition, the clerk's office action is directed entirely by council or by board council or by state statute or election law. So in fact, the clerk is only responsible, and actually it's only appropriate that we provide the date that petition signatures are due into our office. And we have also provided the number of registered voters, as most times the requisite number of petition signatures required is based on the number of registered electors in the township. So to provide any additional materials or anything on that order is not wholly appropriate. However, in the case of the requests that have been made to our office, we have expeditiously, to the best of our ability and as quickly as possible, provided any guidance that bond counsel or general counsel has directed us to do. Publications are done all within the timelines and specifications of the particular issue. Again, that we don't dictate any of that, but we do attempt to provide answers and services as quickly as possible. In this case, a request that came into our office, we responded within 24 hours. We did wait for advice of bond counsel before providing additional information. So we have provided everything that is required and then some, and we will process all of the petitions as far as validation of signatures as well as formatting and such. All of that, actually the appropriate time for that to be evaluated is when they are submitted. So again, our protocols are not set by our office. They are dictated by the law or by the specifics of the particular issue. So we simply process those things. We do it to the best of our abilities so that we may provide the highest level of service. We strive to do that every single day for any member of the public who comes in to speak with us. So it's always our intent. It's always what we plan to do. If there is any question that any member of the public has regarding any issue, whether it be the petition signature, do that, or how any particular election process or any other areas in which the clerk's office has any authority, please feel free to contact our office anytime. We will make every attempt to respond to you as quickly as we possibly can and as accurately as possible. So very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to wish everyone a happy 4th of July and everyone stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make it quick also. Wow, what a difference a year makes. Almost a year sitting up here. Thank you all. Hasn't been the happiest, I'm sure, for some of you. You probably may regret it, but I've enjoyed it, and I will continue to enjoy it. Several changes have been made. We will continue to make changes, and a little bit of modernization in the township and how it runs, and cleaning up in certain areas that have been left deficient and overlooked. And we will continue to fix that. CNN Plus is alive and well, and here in Chesterfield Township, and you can always tell where that comes from. As far as the DeMink pump station, I will stand by that. I have no problem standing by that. Remember, there was a report and a study done on it, and then it sat. And I picked it up, and we're going to do something about it, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to take care of the residents that deserve to be taken care of. Communication with the residents, more transparent than past elected officials ever tried to do, and we will continue to improve on that. Just because it's not what you like or what you demand, you had that opportunity and you lost it. So we'll continue doing that and improving on it as we move forward. Platte Moran is going to be here the next meeting to make their presentation, their annual presentation based on the audit. You will also see a DPW leadership agreement that we have worked out and will present to the board seeking approval for that position. Trustee Demink, yes, thank you for mentioning Lieutenant Krull, a mentor to me years ago. And then his son also spent 26 years with us as a police officer here. So condolences to the Krull family. He's entrenched here, well-known and well-respected law enforcement official. With that being said, I will not politic from this spot, and all you have to do is Google the candidates' names and see who, what we do and how we serve the community. With that being said, motion to adjourn at 9:06. Support. Trustee Demink, supported by Treasurer Elliott.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned, 9:06.